Macron is speaking. Let's have a listen.
Prime Minister Modi. Faithful to its principles, India did its utmost for its presidency of the G20 to serve unity and peace and send across a message of unity while Russia is still waging its war of aggression in Ukraine. So here I would like to thank Prime Minister Modi and say once again that France stands alongside India. Before I report to you on our conclusions and the way I see them, of course, I would like to say a few words and say that all our thoughts go to Morocco and its people. They are going through a tragedy which is touching all of us. France yesterday, of course, sent a personal message, directly a message to the King, Mohammed VI, and we stand ready to send resources whenever Morocco tell us it is the right time to do so. We have technicians who stand ready, and this morning the World Bank, the IMF, the African Union and France as well stood together to send across a strong message to Morocco for reconstruction in this context. And our thoughts also go to Brazil, who suffered a major storm recently. In this context of the G20, I would like to commend the African Union for joining G20 as a full-fledged member. As you know, France was amongst the first ones to support this candidacy, and in Bali we launched a call. At the time, Macky Sall was representing the African Union, and what was at the time a wish is now a reality. The G20 will sit at the table where the decisions are taken, and I'm very pleased that what we were calling for in Bali has now been approved by all. First of all, this G20 confirms once again the isolation of Russia. A vast majority of the G20 members condemn the war in Ukraine and its impacts. And we've been dealing with the economic and food consequences of this war precisely to maintain the unity of the planet. And the entire G20 also commits to a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, and I insist on these words. That's in accordance with the UN Charter, and also is a reminder of our support to the principle of territorial integrity. After the summit we organized in Paris that led to the Paris Pact for the Peoples and the Planet, a number of things that we launched have been endorsed here. And what I would like to tell you, what is important here, is that this agenda we've been promoting for a number of years has moved forward on the occasion of this G20 in India. First of all, what we advocated in Paris and what led to this Paris Pact for the Peoples and the Planet was reiterated with many African countries ahead of this summit. They signed together with France a piece in which we were expressing our support for the pact. Let me remind you of the four underlying principles. We need not choose between the fight against poverty and the fight for the planet. Second, it is for each country to choose its own path with the support of the international community. Thirdly, we need a major leap when it comes to financing, and all of that very much presided over the conclusions on this topic. When it comes to mobilizing international financing to tackle poverty and climate change, this G20 acknowledged a number of developments. First of all, we exceeded the $100 billion of reallocation of SDRs. It is in 2020, at the time that we decided with the IMF to issue some new SDRs. Then, when we worked on financing the African economies, we agreed to reallocate $100 billion to Africa. And now, and this is the work we undertook back in 2020, it is at last genuinely $100 billion that are being reallocated. And France did more than what it was requested to do. We reallocated 40% of our SDRs. So I, of course, call upon all countries to continue and, most importantly, to deliver on what they committed to be doing. And next, this year, we will reach the target of $100 billion to finance climate transition in developing countries. And in June, we had a report in Paris telling us that we were about to reach that target. It is a commitment that was made in 2015, and we exerted more pressure so that we could do it. Third element, we could see that what was done in Paris, and remember we had this first meeting of joint financing, all multilateral developing banks attending with the major financial institutions. Well, we got some results. We're increasing the risks taken by our developing banks and development banks, and we're increasing substantially the public finance simply by taking more risks with the existing mechanisms. And this is something that was agreed upon in Paris in June. And at the G20, we all agreed upon this commitment taken in Paris with the goal of having $200 billion of private finance for developing countries. So all of that was initiated in Paris in June and has been approved by the G20. So that's an endorsement of the 4Ps pact. But we want to do more in terms of efficiency, and this is also a commitment that we made in Paris. First of all, we support a deep reform of global governance. This is Security Council, but as well the World Bank and the IMF. They have to reflect today's reality and in terms of demography and economy as well. And then we want to increase the available tools. That's why we want to replenish the World Bank, and France is supporting that so that the emerging countries have a greater role to play. And we want, of course, to increase as well what is allocated to the issue of climate change. And we want some further commitments on behalf of the emerging countries to phase out coal.